Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas Peter Ugero, and as always, I have the pleasure and honor of having my online compadre, John Coleman, on. How you
Hey,
doing?
Nicholas. How you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. It's great to talk to you once again.
Yeah, it's a blast. Look forward to chatting here.
Yes. And so this interview that we're gonna be doing, it's strictly all about John. It's about his business, his website, his school, everything that he's doing, and what we can expect from him in the future. And so, if you just want to give a brief introduction for any poor soul that hasn't had the opportunity to get to know you or what you're about, if you care to explain.
Sure. I'm here in Connecticut, and for oh golly, spare me the math. I think it's on like 15 years, 14 years I've been teaching, and that's kind of my wheelhouse, as they say. So that's really where I put a lot of my work in on social media stuff, but also in real life. And I suppose we'll be talking about the details of that going forward. But I'm a teacher in any case.
Perfect. And I actually have a screen share, so when we go a little bit further in, we can actually show your website at the same time. So just to do a rapid fire right now, let's just so where were you before Apocatastasis, and what inspired you to create this website and the business and the school?
Sure. I was in undergrad way back when, and I was asked to teach part time at a little parochial school, which is a little bit south of where I am in Connecticut, around Danbury area, and it was a very interesting experience because the the entirety of the student population were coming out of homeschool, and basically the parents were going a bit stir crazy, and they were a little bit out of their league by the time the high school years rolled around. So this was a very interesting school for that reason. And even from the word go, there were many strengths to this community, and there's much to be said for this school and for the experiment. But there, even from the ground, there was a great instability, and I think that's a great hamstringing that homeschoolers repeatedly do to themselves. And so there were many praiseworthy things in this community, but there were also these persistent problems, Nicholas, where uh, the damage of the culture, of the mindset, and so forth wasn't as muted as one might think. And this is interesting because a lot of these people, to their credit, had reached certain conclusions about society and about schooling and so forth, and they acted on it to a certain extent. And yet, I was noticing there was a lot of, just pedagogically speaking, a lot of erratic things, just a lot of jumping around from course to course, a lot of instability year to year, a lot of the damage of the consumer mindset, which plays itself out in day-to-day life and in interpersonal interactions. And so, as my pedagogy sharpened and my perception of things sharpened, I thought I could do things better. And so, about this time, it's great that you got in touch, and I got in touch with you about this time of year because we're coming up on the 7th year anniversary of the school. I really was just it was almost like a YouTube channel, or I had to do something. And I never really had much of a plan, except I couldn't stay in this place anymore for pedagogical reasons, for interpersonal reasons that played up on that. And I just had to act, and so I did. And that was the first step in 2014. I'd been thinking about it for some years, or certainly some months beforehand. But I thought, with the symbolism of Easter and various things, that would be a good time to get the ball rolling.
Awesome. So, was there like a stand like was it just the overall experience that you had at the school that was really just pushing you into that viewpoint of I got to do this on my own and I could do it better than what they're doing, or is it like you were saying, like seeing like the students and how they were responding year to year, class to class, and all that stuff?
Yes. There was one of the great benefits of this place was also very telling. There weren't many hands on deck, especially for the high school level. And there was always on my mind and the other teachers that worked in the high school department, there was always this idea to move beyond this homeschool co-op. And you could see that it was a real shame. This happened to be a Catholic school, and you can see this on the leadership level. Clerically, there was never the impetus to move in the direction. And as I've considered things, the state of the Catholic Church is in that state because of Catholics. It has very little to do, I believe, with infiltration and this sort of thing, but that's a separate discussion. But even on this local level, there was this self-defeating leadership. And then more to the point, these students, because we didn't have many teachers, I had the great opportunity to be with them over many years. I had some students from 7th grade through 12th grade, a tremendous opportunity to watch their pedagogy grow. We were doing looping long before looping got to be the trend it's lately become. And that experience really confirmed for me the benefit of long-term interaction with teachers and the same class setting. That stability was a tremendous benefit. You might say that a mediocre teacher for several years running is far, far better than 10 excellent teachers that are changing every semester. I would absolutely go in the ring on that point. So I saw what the benefits were there, and I knew that the chances of coming across on many levels students of this caliber and with their circumstances and so forth, with this community, the chances of coming across a similar one was very, very slim again. And also, not only was there clerical failure, but more culpably, I believe, were the parents. I've always noticed parents are the biggest enemy of their child's education, and oddly enough, it's often the homeschooling parents that are the biggest saboteurs. And as my pedagogy has developed year to year, I'm noticing that for all of its commendability, the community of homeschoolers now is not quite the caliber that it was in the 80s or 90s. And there's a lot of, more culpably, as I say, than the clerical leadership in this place. I believe it was the self-defeating behavior of the parents that were constantly spiking their children's education. There's a lot of temerity. There's a lot of temerity in homeschooling, particularly religious homeschooling, because of the culture. It's a very adversarial culture because in many respects, the culture is adversarial to them. But unfortunately, that almost lends itself to the type of stultification which pop culture describes them as religious conservatives and homeschoolers as. It's almost like they're playing into that, unfortunately. And I noticed that, and because of all of that, I realized that that option was done, and I couldn't stand that community any longer. But then also the public school was out because those problems were 10 times worse on many fronts. And so there was only two other options after that, which was to move on to another field of work, or to go ahead with a school of my own. And so that was the option I chose.
Yeah, that was a good option indeed, for sure. So as a transition from that, what was the process to even begin to create just the school and the website, student acquisition, creating the website, any form of marketing?
Sure. I chose the date of what in the Christian calendar is called Holy Saturday. not just for religious reasons, but also because of the Easter Rising. And it's very difficult to understand my psychology without understanding the importance of this event, and shall we say the mythology of this event. And what's pertinent to our discussion is not the history of the 1916 Easter Rising, but one event which is pertinent to Apocatastasis and the resilience of the work. And that is, in 1916, you had this rebellion planned. And at the very last minute, literally within a day before it was supposed to kick off, it was itself scuttled for reasons that would make it a whole show in and of itself. And the planners of this rebellion all of a sudden faced the fact that 90% of the men and material and so forth that they thought they had access to, which wasn't much to begin with, was not going to be available. However, they did have some local units within their direct command around the city of Dublin, and that was enough to go ahead, they felt, with it, although the chances of any real success were zero. And so that rather fatalistic decision I also used to plan the timing of the school. And so to your question, Nicholas, what was the planning? What was the procedure there? It was simply to go ahead. It was simply myself as a teacher to go ahead. And what did that look like in the early years? Initially, just the website, just trying to get my mind around the enormity, not just of the immediate task, which your question was on, but also on the task I saw for the school, which wasn't simply to provide an education, but I, as the years have gone by, I began to perceive, even by 2014, I began to perceive that so much of this foul present order was connected to education. So much of it, not the least of which perhaps is the overarching, dispiriting nature of modern pedagogy. And that is not just modern public school pedagogy. That's the same system is used in the homeschoolers who think they're so different and so alternative. The same systems used in the college world. It's the same systems used in the private school world. And it's that system which is so dispiriting, on top of a lot of minutiae, which have, from the very way the school is spatially and temporally structured, goes on to affect the larger society. And so initially, it was really trying to grasp the enormity of, indeed, education's role on this society and what it could be. And so initially that indeed was just the website. And then that began to progress itself to lectures, public lectures, not actually on education or on the school, but rather on topics, academic topics. You see, Occupy Wall Street was something I was involved with at the very late stages of it, after the cameras had gone and indeed most of the people had gone. I suppose there was a certain fatalism in my activity there, because the revival, obviously, in retrospect, was a lost cause. But part of that was, of course, the University of the Streets, or as it was called, Occupy University, which was a kind of subsidiary effort there, which carried on for a number of years in one of the rooms that was rented by the group in NYU, if memory serves, and it would just carry on by sporadic lectures. This was at the point where college loans and things were getting to get some press there. But anyway, to your point, Nicholas, Occupy University, which was just people with boxes of books in the street lecturing, that was quite an inspiration on Apocatastasis. And so even from the word go, it was always the work must always go ahead. And so oftentimes in those early years, it was renting rooms, and in the beginning, some people came and then they lost interest, and then multiple times, some of which you can find on the school's YouTube channel, you can see I'm lecturing to nobody. And that'll run a psychological trip on you when you've dropped a few $100s and a few months of effort, and not a soul shows up. And that went on for years in various ways and various degrees. And you'd get one or two people, but it always had to go forward. And so it did. And it plowed along. And frankly, it's the difficulty, because the damage of the consumer culture is so great that, I'd be lying to say that a lot of the people involved at various points weren't just looking for, a relatively amiable tutor at a relatively amiable price. I'm afraid that a lot of people involved in the school early on were probably giving a lot of lip service. In fact, I think most of the nods and the approval on things, there was, a lot of people humoring myself and whatnot. But it must and did always go on. I always saw, and this is a big problem in education overall, and I'll wind it down because you could ask specifics there, but I don't want to go on too long on this point. But whether it was a public school or homeschool, grade or college, one of the great damages you hear all the time is that the teacher works for the student. And that is something which is not the case. The teacher works for the knowledge. He is answerable to the scholars whom he benefits from, very many of which are dead and only exist on paper in this side of the grave. And that is something I've really tried to assert, and very often it's left it's left a sour taste in people's mouths, because even the homeschoolers, who have much to their credit, they are very, very damaged by this idea that the teacher somehow works for them. And so it's been such a balancing act, because the enormity of the educational crisis is it's vast.
Yeah, it definitely it's a full spectrum type of thing, especially the psychological aspect of it, and how like students or the parents perceive things, and then having that false sense of being different because they're doing it at home, to your point, when in fact they're actually still using that same type of model and structure, which is only to their benefit or to their detriment. So what was it that really helped you in terms of having consistent students and having consistent people that had the right mindset, that weren't just kind of tickling your, or what was it, like you were saying, like they were like playing along, when was it that, or what was it that like really got those genuine people in there, and the people that really knew what you were about and agreed with what you were doing?
I think it was this past year. In a nutshell. And to elaborate, everything is been turned topsy-turvy. If the fourth turning book is any guide, the next decade is going to be continuing degrees of topsy-turviness. And right or wrong, usually wrong, man is a herd follower. And a great deal of people, oh golly, how many dozens of people have emailed me over the years. A great deal of teachers hate this system, and they live and die in this system, or they, more times than not, just move on to other jobs. A lot of people, a lot of parents, a lot of students, right? They see the flaws, but they don't act on it. And I think this year has given at least the less timid souls amongst us at least a bit more encouragement to think outside the box grand, but also to act as such. And I think with that, ideas like Apocatastasis don't sound so crazy. it is absolute certain fact that the college model that we knew it is completely over. That is done. That idea of everyone going to college, that is through. It had been declining actually since about Occupy, since the Depression of 2008. And college enrollment had progressively been going down, but a lot of the reason for that answer is that the colleges themselves, particularly the private ones, are going to go out of business. It remains to be seen what will happen with grade education. So if the mountain won't go to Muhammad, the Muhammad will. What do they say? That Muhammad won't go to the mountain, bring the mountain to Muhammad. So if people weren't willing to question the educational paradigm, don't worry. The schools are at least going to look very different, even more obnoxious than they were, or they're going to be out of business. So to answer your question in a nutshell again, I think it's this past year with COVID-19, coronavirus and all that has encouraged more soul searching and more activity on people's part.
Yeah, this whole pandemic situation has been a lot of bad negative things, but then also a lot of positive things, like you were saying, the soul searching. For me, it was horrible at first, but then it got better this past year, or this new year, with my personal changes, as you're aware. So that's great. That's excellent. And I know that from that interview with Michael Tessarian, you got a couple students, which was, I can't even believe that. That's excellent. And so I wanted you just to go. I can screen share it. I just wanted you to do a quick rundown of your website and just give people a little bit of information, what's in here, what they can find, like some of the resources that are here.
Sure. So in fact, as of this recording, it will be updated some for our 7th anniversary. But the main contents will certainly be there. And so there's an explanation of the school, and we can get into that, maybe the breakdown there, and maybe the philosophy pedagogically. But before that more in-depth treatment, there's a listing of the various courses. Of course, the focus is in the humanities. To pull against a lot of the focus on the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, not that they're worthless, but historically speaking, those were considered to be the lower levels of knowledge. The higher ones being things related to the humanities. And then highest still would be things like theology or philosophy and so forth. And that was outside of even the Western paradigm. That was, in other cultures as well. So it's very interesting that the value of knowledge in this modern society is inverted from most of human experience. So the mechanical things, mathematics and so forth, are the most valuable. I mean, Nicholas, I could be a rich man if I gave SAT classes and and that sort of thing. So anyway, the focus of the school is the humanities, which is a vast subject in and of itself: history, literature, languages, and related fields. And then I kind of lay out the thrust of the school. So the integration, which is something I very, very much was happy to participate in Ridgefield there in the early days. The integration of blocks of knowledge. So not just stability in instructor over a time period. The school's curricula runs for 3 years there, the full undergraduate level layout. But also the stability in topic and integration. So the same material, or at least the same time chronologically, that we're studying in history is the same. We'll read whatever. If it's ancient Greece, we'll read the Republic or something like that. So there's that unity there, and you can see, and I noticed this even in my early days. It might be 2 or 3 years after you went over, I'm just throwing things out there, the Renaissance. And then, you're having a discussion I've had this happen, 2 years later with a high schooler or something, and you're talking about the 20th century, World War II or something, and then you mention something about the Renaissance, something that you and they went over a few years before, and you can see it clicks in a way that is much more difficult to happen in the present paradigm, where you're changing instructors all the time, you're changing courses. Homeschoolers do this all the time, and if I'm giving critique to that community especially, it's because they can offer so much, and they're self-sabotaging. So I hope people understand the spirit of this critique. It is constructive criticism, but they do that all the time. They'll switch. There's no sense of continuity across the board in public school and in college. People are just jumping around. They'll do a different curricula every year, and so I've sought to address that, because I will also go into the ring about this point, and that is, a teacher and a student don't make any serious intellectual progress at least till they've had 2 full years together. And that sounds crazy, because how many of us ever had a teacher for 3 or 4 years in a row? Almost nobody. And that, I can't imagine, is a mistake. I mean, the University of Chicago has all these dummy schools around it, the laboratory schools. And they study this stuff. The powers that be, they know exactly what this sort of dislocation does, and it creates this society. And so that's been a great honor, to be able to maintain those academic relationships for so many years. And then there's more just day-to-day stuff about the workings of the school. Whether that's options for students who are broke but still have they still have obligations, so we have different ways to address that reality, or events that are going on and whatnot. So all that stuff is on the site there.
Awesome. So for the website, so WordPress is just it just allowed you to create the website. It was pretty straightforward. Did you just create a layout, or did you have to have outside help in order for that to happen?
Well, with WordPress and with a whole lot of other things, Nicholas, it was and is difficult, because in the beginning, it's not just a matter of theoretically getting all your ducks in a row, or practically what's the school going to look like, or how do I reach out to people? And it's such a huge job and then if the purpose of the school is primarily for the teacher, and again, that might shock people, but there has to be, everything has to be done properly and in order. If the teacher does not have knowledge as front and center, their own writing, their own reading, you'd be surprised how many teachers don't read every single day for an hour or two. If they're not publishing, right, then if they're not engaged in the life of the mind, if the student is boss, it's inverted, and the quality of instruction will suffer. So early on, at that point, I had certain obligations financially I had to meet. So I was working in the bar at night. I was cooking. I was cleaning. It was crazy, because you'd have to be preparing for these lectures that no one would go to. You'd have all these people kind of humoring you like you were a retarded child because no one else was doing this. But John, he's kind of nice. He's kind of eccentric. So hey, good luck, man. I'll see if I can make the talk, right? And then you'd be laboring, and you wouldn't be back until 1 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes you'd be up at 6 the next day. Crazy stuff, and so there's so much to take care of. And then there's that PR aspect, not just reaching out to students, but like you say, web presence. And the internet was a very different thing 7 years ago. It was a lot more fun, frankly, and it was a lot more free. And regardless, though, money was tight, and frankly, this would be a topic we can explore in more depth in our talk going forward, Nicholas. But I was always adamant to not ingratiate the school with this social system, particularly with the legal system or the banking system, So not only is there the enormity theoretically and practically, there's also this reality of growing the school and not making any recourse to banks or to the legal system, which makes it very difficult to operate with things like WordPress, like even putting signs up, because the Chamber of Commerce, you realize is the mafia that runs every time. You can't even put up a little sign on a street corner without getting the go ahead. And when you really begin to not operate in the system that we're all massaged to operate into, you learn how real this system is and how much it does not want people to operate outside of it. And so for practical reasons, just alluded to, very often it's been free access on WordPress, right? And so you have the free option, or the free option on StreamYard, and so forth. And then it's been a whole thing. How do you arrange tuition if there's no bank? And there's that whole aspect, but it's had to be that way, because if the school were ever to incorporate as a legal entity, it would make things unbelievably efficient. It would make things oh my goodness, Nicholas, I could hobnob down at the Chamber of Commerce. They have all these galas. I could, oh my goodness, it would be so easy to get a bank account, so you don't seem like you're crazy all the time trying to explain the legal straw man to everyone. But the second that would happen, the whole purpose of the school would be compromised. And why is that? And this is a crux reason. It's made the work 10,000 times more hard, more difficult. Because the second if we were to become a legal entity with a nice little bank account number and a tax number, and it would, oh my goodness, the skids would be greased. The second that would happen, it would put us into the same system that the educational order has created. And if the purpose, and this is my concluding point, I think it's maybe more wide-ranging than you might have had in mind asking the question, but you can see how things are connected. The purpose of a school is to teach the truth. It is to teach the truth. If we were to become a legal entity, we would have to acknowledge some made-up status from the state as being real. And even that kernel of inconsistency, that would, on a, shall we say, a metaphysical level or on a spiritual level, that would sabotage the entire raison d'etre of the school. And so things are 10,000 times harder, including WordPress, and including having to get what you can for free, because it's so difficult to operate in this system, because the purpose of a school is truth. And so I've gone hither and yon with your response there, but I hope the purpose of that at least is to understand the enormity of the work, and also the reason why things look a little bit more mom and pop than I would necessarily like. But there we go.
And like the amount of respect that I have for you for taking that stand of not going into those systems, because you know that it would ruin it. Like it's just insane, and you know that it's making your whole process just that much more difficult, and you know that, but you're still continuing to stick to your principles, which is what it's all about, people. If we start compromising and start shifting our principles just to make things easier for us, that's how we end up getting into the spot we're in right now. It's just continuing to compromise and saying, it's not that big of a deal, you know? And then 5 years down the line, they add something else. Oh, well, we're already doing this that we compromised on. We forgot that we had to do that because now this is just normal to us. And then we just continue to do that, and slowly degrade our principles and our morals and the way our society runs and what we believe in, what we think is true, what we think is false. Like, it's just incredible that you take the stand like that. And it's it really speaks volumes to the type of person that you are, and it's excellent. So you should definitely be proud of yourself, and I'm glad that things have improved for you in terms of the school. It's excellent. And as another question for the school, how does it mesh with, because I know like it's more of a tutoring type of thing. So how does it mesh with like college kids and like school credits, or with high school kids? Like, do they accept your teaching in their kind of network, or is it where it's just for their own benefit, for the students' benefit, or is it outside the system, or do they actually like recognize it?
Well, actually, interesting you say that, and it's a common misunderstanding. The school has always, from day one, posited to offer for the full-time enrollment an undergraduate level education. Very often, because especially in the early years, beggars can't be choosers, I decided to take on tutoring work, and I still do that to a certain extent. In the early years, you see, Nicholas, and this explains my lengthy time in Ridgefield, even though I increasingly lost hope in in the parents in particular. But up until quite recently, I would always have the hope that people would come around. They would kind of come around to the vision. They would actually read the website. They would actually listen to what I was saying. And I realized in the past couple of years that that's not the case. And that, yeah, exactly. People just want a tutor. No, Apocatastasis is not primarily a tutoring thing, though it's gone on in the past, etc. But no, it's always sought to, and I do believe, as my curricula vitae, and at least the recorded bits on YouTube can attest to, it's always taught at a college level, and that's the difficulty I see with a lot of alternative education. There's a lot of critique and a lot of talk, and those few who do act on it, they very often get very comfortable in their little niche. They get happy with tutoring, but tutoring is a really stinky way to teach. It really is, and it has nothing to do really with the quality of the teacher or of the student even. But education is, I believe, a group effort. It's a group effort. And so that's always been this balancing act of making the critique of the mainstream schools and industrial education, or whatever you want to call it, and then also maintaining the discipline and what I believe are the benefits of, class learning, of a curricula, and so forth. But, and I think, to get to the philosophy of the school before we circle back to your specific question about how it meshes with the existing matrix, it's the case with the banking system and the legal system I've mentioned, just as much with the educational system, which is we make the system. And as the years have gone on, Nicholas, my critique of society is less and less, oh, look at all these agendas that are happening. Look at all these secret societies. Look at all these plots. All of those things exist in terrific degrees of darkness. I don't deny those. But the more time goes along, I realize we are in this condition because of us, which is why I'm giving otherwise commendable groups of people such a hard time in our chat here, because we're in this condition because we put up with it. We make these systems. And if we have the backbone to exist without their banking system, then we will do it, or we won't and will remain in it. If we wish to exist without the Bar Association's legal system, we will do it. If there's a will, there's a way, or we will not do it. And likewise, to answer your question, if we wish to exist without this educational matrix, when I say without, I mean standing outside of, we will do it or we will not do it. And when it comes to meshing with this system, so say there were a grade school student, and this comes up, that would like to study at Apocatastasis. The school obviously is not accredited because that would involve various recognitions within the existing system, not just educationally, but also legally and so forth. You're not going to apply to one of these accreditation institutes without having all of the clubhouse passwords, shall we call it. So what would happen if particularly a younger student wants to go on to normie college, so long as they're open for, well, golly, what do we do? Well, you do what unschoolers do, which is you go down to the department or you phone them up and you ask the department head for an override. People believe they're on this conveyor belt, like you need the high school diploma to go to college. You do not need a high school diploma to go to college. If I want to be snarky, I'll say that all you need is a pulse and a wallet, but which might be true more times than you imagine. But also, you don't need your SAT. You don't need this stuff if you're willing to take initiative, which is really the underlying crux of the problem. Whether that's teachers who are griping about the system but never do anything about it, whether it's homeschoolers who just wallow in just co-ops and endless curriculums and they never move to the next stage. Which I believe, and this is really part of the vision of the school, which is a larger cultural renewal. It's not just a matter of having, a little school and just plugging along, but I've always seen the school as part of a larger cultural renewal, which we will need to throw off these systems of tyranny. So practically, yes, it's just a matter of taking some darn initiative and going from there. You're not at the mercy of these conveyor belts. You have way more power than you imagine, and the more of us do this stuff, the more power we're going to have. The last point on this is one lesson I've learned is that a lot of people that you think will be on your side in something like this will just be humoring you. And you have to, any young teachers out there or people who are looking maybe for a second or third career to get into something like this, you have to realize that if you have that sort of determination, most people won't. They'll humor you for a while, for a couple months, a couple years, but don't wait on people. Do not wait on people, and you're going to find out how flaky people are as the years go by. People you thought were rock solid, and they knew the agendas, and they knew what was moving. When push comes to shove, they will collapse. And I think we're seeing that in a lot of ways that are beyond even the educational bit this past year. But anyway, just take some darn initiative, and a student would not have any problem getting into one of these normie schools.
That's an excellent point, because as a separate subject, the whole masks inside of stores, when that first came about, I didn't do anything like that. I just refused to go into stores. So sometimes if my brother went shopping, I was like, hey, can you give me a few things? Or I was dumpster diving, and I had no idea that there was an option that you can 100% go into a store without a mask on and not be harassed or whatever. And I had no idea. It says masks are required. It says this. It says this. This is how it says it has to be. So there's no other option. So I'm SOL. But no, it's in fact, no, you have a ton of options. You can give legitimate reasons, or you can cite all these laws and statutes that say you can't refuse my service. It's a place of public accommodation, yada, yada, yada. There's so many options out there, and we've been kind of ingrained to think that it's just in this box. That's all you got. These are the options. There's nothing else you can do about it. So yeah, taking initiative, just making a phone call, doing a couple other things. If there's a will, there's a way, just like you were saying. That's a great point. And yeah, and then other people can see that that's an option. So that was a really good point that you mentioned right there, because I wouldn't have even thought about that. I was just thinking within the terms of the system, which is exactly what you were explaining. So how's the reception been? Because I know obviously you're saying you've already kind of touched on that. Like people were kind of just humoring you. They came for a couple months or a couple years. This guy's kind of eccentric. What's this all about? But you said how it's picked up in the past year. How has the reception been with like students and parents and especially peers in the field? Have you inspired anyone else that's in the system, that's in these like mainstream systems to kind of get out of there, or have people? Yeah, how especially the peers. That's the one I'm really curious about. Is the peers?
Sure. I will address that in a second. If I could finish up on the last point, Nicholas, as I alluded to with the state of the internet on a little way, with the agendas moving on so many fronts, it's going to get harder and harder on indeed all of those fronts. And on a certain level, I do not believe that, naturally speaking, that what's happening now can be stopped. I think there's too much. I don't know the percentage. That would be all conjecture. Maybe it's 30 or 40%, but it's enough that whatever is moving will not be stopped. And then those who kind of see what's happening with the mask and with 1,000 other things, they're not really going to ever act on it. Or if it will, it'll be some limited, individual thing, which is really what you've seen just flopping around for the past couple of years, is all these individual efforts. There's no larger vision and so forth. So it's going to get more and more difficult to operate. And the last point before I get to your question on reception, the last point is the psychology of this, shall we say, of apocatastasis, or of the work. You really have to realize that we're under an occupation, socially speaking. It doesn't look at, because you don't have, oh wait, you do have soldiers all over the place. But even beyond that, you just have to realize that this society is under total occupation by the banking system, by the legal system. It sees itself as foreign to us. Whether or not we see ourselves in that relationship is irrelevant. But that's just going to continue. And that's a heavy cross to bear, I suppose. But this work will be met by men with backbones, like yourself and like others out there. As to the reception of the school, when I had my initial misgivings in my original station there down in Ridgefield, I carried on for a number of years, because whilst I lost any belief that the administration or the parents of this school were going to be of any use towards any sort of cultural, educational renewal, I still thought that there was still hope in the students, and I think a lot of teachers involve themselves with various aspects of the educational world, from college through kindergarten, and they have that mindset, which is, if I can just change one student's life. That is defeated mindset. That's a very beautiful thought, but it is the mindset of someone who is defeated. And it's stalling out a lot of educational reform. You have a lot of very talented people who are effectively wasting their time with a very narrow understanding of what success and what a restoration of the educational field is. So initially, my reception was actually quite positive from the students I had previously and so forth. And then people were intrigued by the idea, but very little action on it. As for colleagues, that's been quite interesting, Nicholas. I'll never forget, to the day I die, I was probably having a beer after cooking in the bar. Like I said, I was working through the nights whilst I was doing Apocatastasis in the day, or I was still part-time down in Ridgefield. I was working through the nights, which was not very good for sleep patterns, mind you. But I remember one night I got into a conversation with a man. I believe he was coming off his wedding rehearsal, and so the whole wedding party was there. They're getting married the next day or two, and we were talking, and he had said, my wife's a teacher, and then, oh, wow, I got on about the school and this or that. And I'll never to the day I die forget his sand eating grin when I told him at that hour I had no students. And so I'd gone on about this college, and Apocatastasis is always posited to be a college, and I believe that claim has been met and continues to be met. But I'll never forget, he's looking at basically, I don't know, I was cooking that night or dishwashing. He's looking at the dishwasher, and he believed that he had caught me out in a lie, and whatever. The conversation petered out, but the reception has not been particularly good from my colleagues in the educational world, particularly, oddly enough, from the alternative educational world. I've either come across people whom I believe are grifters, some of whom have something of a following in this world, or a certain resentment or disinterest. I've actually had much more respect as the years have gone on from public school teachers. I've had a better reception, and as time goes on, I've come to appreciate some of the professionalism they have that I don't see in the alternative educational world. And unfortunately, there's a sour discourse which has penetrated the alternative world, where they're too comfortable, and I keep going back to that, they're too comfortable with their little curriculums and, feeling they're badasses, and they're onto the system and they know all about John Rockefeller's education. And it's actually been the normies, shall we say, in college world and in public school world that have actually very often given me a warmer reception, certainly a more professional reception there. So I would say that to your question.
And right when you were explaining that last part, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking it's because they're in that normal public school system and they're seeing the stark contrast that you're presenting, and then the people that are in the alternative are not as receptive to it because they feel like we're doing it the way that it should be done. We're the alternative, so we're doing it the way that we think is the best way, and your way that's just kind of mundane or just kind of out there. That's why you're not having success or whatever else. So they're too big for their britches, and they're, like you said, feeling like they're badass, and that makes a lot of sense now that you had explained that. That's really unfortunate. And with your partner, Dr. Namal Das, how did he come about? Was he a colleague from somewhere else, or did he contact you, or vice versa? How did he join?
Sure, I'll answer that if you allow me a follow-up there, Nicholas. To those in the alternative education world, particularly homeschoolers, grade homeschoolers, my counsel, and this is please take this to heart. You need to mind yourself about sloppiness. And the reason I'm saying that is the state is going to allow this to go on until you have dug a hole for yourself. The reason, one of the reasons I'm giving the homeschool community such a hard time in this interview is because I can see them stumbling into a trap, and the academic rigor of homeschoolers are not in any shape, way, or form what it was in the 70s or 80s. And you're having a community which is much like the church, actually, is living off of the fumes of a previous generation, and it's recycling the talking points of a previous generation, and it does not have the substance of a previous generation, and it's leading to hubris. And don't you think for a second that the same state actors which led the alternative news community down the Pied Piper road of QAnon, do not think for a second they will not and are not in present tense doing the exact same thing with the homeschool world. And when they want to, you will see them drop the hammer, and you will have no one to blame but yourself. Tighten up the ship. And also, before I answer your question, Nicholas, on this point, ditch the Lone Ranger mindset. This is something, and this is more than just the homeschool world, but you see a lot of people in various alternative communities. This is the effect of pop media, of watching Braveheart and The Patriot and Rambo. There is this Lone Ranger mindset that we all have in various degrees, where we believe in some narrative, we're Mel Gibson coming out with guns, and those could be book bags if you're in the alternative education world, or whatever, right? We have this Lone Ranger mindset, and we have no vision. We have no vision outside of our immediate concerns. I have heard that. I just had an email the other day to this effect from a parent. Again, all I'm, all I need to do is protect my kids from this society, and we just gotta hunker down. And this is the talk of a slave. It is not the talk of someone who has any agency in society. This is how slaves talk. So have a tighter control on your academics, a tighter appreciation of the intellectual life. Because you're coming across that so often in the alt-ed world, is this stupidity, this stultification, this resentment at an intellectual life, particularly the religious homeschooling world. There is a hostility towards intellectuality, and this is a betrayal both of the Christian narrative, and also insofar as you're involved in education. And then also broaden your understanding of your social role beyond your own self, on your own family. Okay, to your point, Nicholas, which was on Dr. Das, I had the pleasure of interviewing Nirmal Das from Canada in December of 2019, in those dear dead days before coronavirus. And again, part of that verbing of the school was, if I wasn't getting students or wasn't getting a lot of students, I had to go forward with academics. Either that was lecturing, or part of that was the interview series. So I had Dr. Das on that series, a conversation with, to talk about his site, the Postal, which has various articles on cultural analysis and so forth. And as it happened, in months following, we went on to another collaboration, a show that we've continued, a Christian history and ideas. But eventually he let it be known to me that he had, unbeknownst to me, kind of tried something like Apocatastasis online up in Canada, and it hadn't really taken off, and he got involved with the Apostle and things. So he came on board with Apocatastasis as I don't know, we don't have any flattering hierarchies or anything like that, as a co-worker, I suppose. About, I would say 10 months ago, late, maybe 8 months ago, late summer of last year, so late 2020. Maybe that corona disruption had worked on him some, and he decided to act on it. But he's been a great help behind the scenes, and we have a lot planned going forward. And I would definitely, those of you who have interest, not just in pedagogy, but in cultural analysis and so forth, you might check out the Postal. They always have fine articles up there.
Yeah, excellent. And it kind of goes straight into the next topic, which was like, what have you done to ensure the site and school stay open regardless of power outages or any sort of disruption, especially like online internet?
That's a huge topic. When I started Apocatastasis, it was really to be the best teacher possible, which was always primarily an academic consideration, as I've laid out before. And then, as I think anyone who's done any independent work like this, you realize just the nitty-gritty stuff you never thought about. Time zones, exchange rates between currencies, just a lot of discipline stuff which we never really learn in school, because we're all trained to have a job. and we're all trained to have someone else take care of all this stuff for us. And so there's been a huge learning curve. And this question that you bring out was indeed not on the radar in the beginning. And you realize how precarious things are. So as of this recording, I have every expectation that, if only temporarily, the internet will go down, if only as an experiment on the part of the powers that be, to see how that plays out. Now, I don't know how much people follow the news, but this has been going on for a decade. Different countries have been turning off the internet. The first time I was aware of this was in Egypt, and during the revolution of 10 years ago, where during that time the internet was turned off. Nobody even thought about that as being an option. But as of this recording, and the things I've seen and the things that I feel are in the offing, the internet will, at least for a certain time, be turned off. It will certainly move, if it is turned back on. It will certainly move towards the direction of licensing. You will absolutely see that coming down the pike. And you will see the merger, as you are, as I am, as we are, of the legal person with the digital person. These persons, so-called, are just like your accounts, right? So you can't, it's like, and the legal person made with the birth certificate, it'll be merged with all your accounts online, and they'll have you more by the neck there. But with this consciousness that the control system will increase, one of the things has been, getting the staff ready for this, in terms of just psychologically. The days of convenience are over. The days of things being easier are over. And part of that, just to add to the difficulty of getting students and people willing to act on their dissatisfaction with the present order, part of that is, there's a whole level of, fund transfers. Try doing that outside of banks and whatever. I have a PhD in that now, and it looks about as hokey as you might imagine. I'm not going to say what we do, but there's that, just that. On this reality of the digital world coming to an end, certainly as we know it, either by a complete closure or by greater licensing, regulation, surveillance, we really are moving little by little to the reality we're probably going to have to go back to text. That is to say, we have every intention, and we are moving right now. We've had 3 major meetings the past couple of weeks on this point. Mail correspondence school, and that's something the earlier generation of homeschoolers will be very familiar with. Correspondence classes and whatnot. A lot of pre-recordings and things. And frankly, and this sounds crazy, but it doesn't sound crazy if you're watching the papers and the TV and whatever. There has to be not just the consciousness that the internet will go down, but you and I need to be prepared that the national postal services will go down as well. I do believe that will happen as part of this in this next decade, this fourth turning, whatever you want to call it, this great reset. And some of that conclusion has to do with the way the postal services have operated this past year. I don't know if anyone's tried to get parcels around or post. Some countries are still off limits, allegedly because of coronavirus. The service is degraded here in these United States. I've had packages come to me, they're just ripped open, and thank God, what was in it was not falling out. You can see that the order is shifting, and they're going to cashier a lot of things. I believe that, frankly, public schools are not really on the agenda of the ruling class anymore, so they'll be put out to seed, much like the churches were. There was a time here in New England where in the Congregational Church in the state of Connecticut were like white on rice. And at a certain point, the rulers of Connecticut no longer needed that, and they've left the churches to wallow for the past 150 years. I do believe the same decoupling is happening with state patronage of schools. This may actually be a good thing, but you may also see that with the Postal Service as well. And so we have plans in that instance as well, and that involves private carriers and having that lined up, that is to say couriers and so forth. And again, it's getting the students in the psychology of the nature of this control system. It's only when you brush up against it you realize how much of a machine it really is. If you don't do that, you could skate through life with all sorts of kinder illusions.
Excellent points. It's quite frightening. And I know that James Corbett just had an interview, and he was talking about the Postal Service in Japan, and they had him. He had to do like a online thing. He had to make like an account, and they had to scan his thing, and he had to put information in there. So he could not even send out his DVDs to people unless he did that. So you had to put yourself in that digital kind of, like you were saying, digitizing us. The World Economic Forum, or Carl Schwab, has talked about our physical, digital, and our biological identities being merged together. So this is playing into that. And in terms of the power outages, similar to like the lockdowns, it's especially in the United States, like it wasn't where it was one size fits all across the country where everyone was under the same lockdown procedures. We had New York, we had California, we had Florida, we had different parts that were in different varying degrees. So if they were smart, I would say that they would do it in pockets with power outages or the internet pulling the plug, because if it's not happening in my neighborhood, I'm fine. I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm not going to worry about it too much. But if it's everyone all at once, that's a little bit more for them to handle. So yeah, I think it would be like pockets, but then also slowly transitioning people to get into the digital stuff. And you're talking about like private couriers, and that's crazy. Like the fact that you have to go through all of these all this planning, and it makes sense, and it's very smart that you're doing so, because you've seen history enough to at least be able to understand that you have to do certain things in order to prepare for yourself. And I mean, this is your livelihood. You've been doing this for 7 years. You were doing this alongside a side job at night. It's crazy. And you've been just working like a dog. And it's just really unfortunate that you have to still go through all these kind of steps just to ensure that you remain intact and you can still communicate with your students. And I can't even imagine what the text-based kind of back and forth, like the mailing stuff, how that would work. That seems really difficult, having to do mail to communicate with your students and provide knowledge. It's like, how is that? It's just absurd that it has to come to this kind of thing. But we got to get prepared. And like you were saying, if we don't brush up against this machine, we don't see how terrifying and how ever encompassing it really is. And we get a false sense of security. And you made a really good point about the exchange rates for the currencies and the time zones. We weren't taught any of this entrepreneurial nitty gritty when we were kids. So as you were rightfully pointing out, there's a huge learning curve. You were completely blind. Oh, geez, I didn't even think about all these little niche things that you need to know in order to even function in a nice manner and have a nice flow to it. So it's kudos to you for just continuing to just persevere, never say die. And as you had rightfully pointed out in our first conversation, never say die. And
yes.
And it's just really good that you're doing that. I think it's a very smart move. It's going to ensure that you're going to be here for a long time, and it's excellent. I just hope that continues to be the case, and that happens quicker, and you're just more prepared as the days go by. And I do remember you had stated something about Nirmal Das. You said he was doing something with the website, or is it with the Apocatastasis website, or is it a brand new website?
Yeah, he's on this very point that you had there, Nicholas. The preparation for whatnot. He's been coding a website, and it's taken quite a bit longer than imagined just to get that right. And again, the work is made so much harder because the system every day gets another click, another click. And so, in the meantime, since this project started in January, the Canadian corporation, which calls itself the Government of Canada, has been rolling out the registration of websites. So that is something we've had to account for. And again, part of this is this occupation mindset. If it comes to that, then we drop the website. We have to keep going, keep going, keep going. It's we kind of operate on a donation model. It's always been the great philosophy of the school has always been to encourage agency in the individual. That's been the fundamental thing. I might have my own ideological hobby horses. I might see Christianity as being very helpful towards that. I might see republicanism as being very helpful towards that. But that's beside the point to this deeper reality of the school, of the individual taking agency over their life. And part of that is, okay, damn, the website went down. Okay, keep it going. Or you find out, yeah, like I was saying with the tuition, you just assume you'll act like men, like the students will act as owners of the society, and they'll meet their obligations. And then you find out, oh, well, PayPal, if you use the word donation, that's a registered copyright. So you have to register everything with the word donation. So now we have to come up with, I'll be like an evangelical Bible thumper. I'll have to say you have to give us love gifts or something, something like that, to come with something like that. But we're under an occupation, and you have to just roll with the punches and keep it going on. Just keep it going on.
Yeah. One of the things you said a little bit earlier that really stood out to me was some of the things that people say that is totally what a slave would say. And that was really impactful for me. And I've had a couple of those thoughts. If I just, like with my channel, if I just inspire one person, then I feel like I did a good job. But it's like, I'm not giving myself enough credit, and I'm not understanding what I'm capable of. I'm not understanding the reach I can potentially have if I just keep pursuing this and not just have those. That's a tiny milestone. That's a joke, I don't want to just have one person. I want to be able to inspire dozens, hundreds of people. I would love to be able to do that. Just for my own personal changes that I've made in my own positivity towards myself. I think we got to get out of that kind of thinking. And I know in one of our previous conversations, we talked about, and even today, you talk about the Lone Ranger stuff. We cannot do that. We have to try to come together in some fashion. But as you also said from history, a lot of people just wimp out. They say they're going to do something. They just stay home. They're not going to be there for you. So we have to understand that, but also try to build that community at the same time. So it's, and as you were saying again, like amazing points, they're just clicking. They're just tightening that thing just a little bit more. We're just getting viced in just a little bit more, and time is of the essence. And it's really, really hard to try to think about all these different avenues that maybe you don't know enough about gardening, or you don't know enough about digital stuff or technological things. So it's like you want to learn at the same time, but then you also have to get things done practically also. So it's very, very difficult right now. And if people are still just playing video games like I was, or smoking weed all day, and it's not doing well for you, if you smoke weed every day, that's fine. But if it's negatively affecting you and you're still doing it, we got to try to snap out of this. We got to really work on ourselves and get that willpower and that perseverance to roll with the punches and not get discouraged, and not have it be where it's a crippling thing. Like, understand, yes, this was really unfortunate, but don't let it stifle your continuance of those agendas that you're trying to set forward. And I think it's excellent that you're doing that. It's very inspiring for me, and hopefully for anyone else that's listening. And so with the website, it's going to be a brand new. It's not even Apocatastasis. It's a brand new website.
Well, it'll host our classes, our pre-recorded classes, and a lot of the information, so forth. But we'll probably keep the WordPress up as well, just as a redoubt in this info war, as a fallback. So it's just getting that presence, keeping that stability, and so forth. That whole social media thing, that's another whole front that's opened up. And again, to keep the academics first and foremost is always a temptation. Well, I need to update this website, or I need to do this, or I can do this YouTube video, and you gotta get that order down, everything properly and in order, and you learn those daily disciplines there. James Connolly, one of the signatories of the 1916 proclamation on Easter Monday, he said, and he may have even said this when he was organizing for the IWW here in America on this East Coast here, he had said something I think a lot of us, whatever our specific area of this right-handed path agenda is, he had said that, speaking in the context of Ireland, but we apply it to whatever land we're in, the people of this nation own every square inch from here to the stars. They own every square inch. And a lot of people are very good in this knowledge of understanding what the problems are. And they're really grand at asserting their rights. Oh, you're violating my rights, and I deserve this, and this is wrong. And they're very often right about these points. But that assertion that the men of the country own every square inch means that is also with the responsibilities of every square inch, and that if the education stinks, it's because of me. If there's a homeless man here, it's because of me. If and so forth and so forth. If there are slaves upon the land, I don't just mean chattel slaves, but other slaves, that's because of me. And until we have that mindset of a king, we're just going to keep flopping around. We're just going to keep flopping around. Americans will know that at the beginning of January 2021, the generals and certain cliques installed a doddering old man to run the United States corporation. And that itself, in a certain respect, that a country could put up with that, is proof of what modern education has done to people's perception of things. But what happened? I mean, look what happened in the Capitol. You had shot for shot. I mean, people just like reenacting the Patriot movie, with the flag. Is that you ever see the last scene of that movie? The Mel Gibson, yeah. They were. I mean, people, they have that whole Rambo thing in their minds, and then it just fizzles out. There's no staying power, and there's certainly no one willing to take up responsibility for things, and that's why we're in this condition, right? So they're great for the rights, great learning about those agendas, but now let's put our back to the wheel and let's get this thing going. We have these responsibilities too.
I just have to end it on that, just because you just made so many good points, and it was really setting in for me. Like, it's really sad, the state of things, and not that there's no staying power and whatnot. I don't even know what to say to that. It's just really, I mean, it's a reality check. It's really sad, but we got to stay hopeful, but at the same time, we got to be realistic and understand what our real faults are and act like a king. It's us that have caused these things to happen. Our complacency and our just yearning for the finer things and just the distractions. It's really put us in this spot. And if one person suffers, we're all suffering. And if we continue to put up with this, it's just going to get worse from here. And we're just going to keep putting up with it, I guess, at this point. But we really got to start doing what you're doing. Be a go-getter. Talk to people. Just take those extra steps. Have some. What was the word you used for the people that like with the tuition? Not with the tuition, but the like the school credit. Like, have initiative. Like, have an initiative. Go forward and take those couple. Like, if you don't know about something, you got ask. Make those phone calls. Do this. Do that. Talk to your neighbors. We got to really start buckling down, and it's even me, like I'm doing stuff, I'm working, I'm trying to get cash, trying to save up, trying to buy practical things, but at the same time, it's still not enough. I know that it's still not enough. I'm still thinking about myself for the most part. I'm trying to get some sort of group together, but good luck trying to find people that are as passionate as you are and that are as like have the willpower and are really wanting to do this. It's very difficult. It's really difficult, and I just really yeah, I just want to let you just say your final things in terms of like your website, where people can find you, your YouTube channel, BitChute, anywhere else. If there's any way that people can contact you or whatever else, if you just want to just lay those things out for people. I'm going to have all the links in the description. I believe I already do. So just so for in the future, anyone can check you out.
Great. Yeah. So just to conclude, the days of discipline have begun. The days of convenience are over. This is time to work. And yes, every day that clicker clicks one more. It always moves in that way. And so becomes increasingly hard. I know how it is to get other sorts of groups together besides education, and there we go. So the days of discipline have begun. Most of the people are going to flake out, including people who think they have the agenda on lock. But towards Nicholas's practical question, anyone who's interested in Apocatastasis can go to apocatastasisinstitute.wordpress.com. We have various social media sites, including BitChute and YouTube. BitChute is a pretty cruddy website, frankly, but it's not at least gone in for the censorship. So all of this stuff is there. As of this recording, there's a hiatus on publishing anything until our 7th year anniversary and Holy Saturday of 2021, which is about a week from now. So we will have a whole bevy of material related to the school, the development of the school, some of the changes we're making to tighten things up. And on that WordPress site, you can get certainly the email for myself and Dr. Das, Apocatastasis Institute at AOL.com, and I get back to all the correspondence I receive. It's always great to get that. And then also there's there are the PDFs of the books, but you can also find out if you want to email me about my hard copies of the books. This is my history book, Hurt. It's kind of a cultural history since the 19th century. And then my one on pedagogy. Again, these are free on the website, but are in hard copy. This is my book on pedagogy, that is teaching practice, some words to the discipulate. And then we also have back issues and new issues of the school's journal. And anyone who wants to, if you have any poetry or art or whatever you'd like to be published, you can write us there. So thank you, Nicholas, for your graciousness and having me on your platform here. It's always grand to talk to you.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I didn't even know you did books. What? You had 2 books that you made? How did I not? And that's like you were just talking about, like the parents not going through your website and reading it. Because I just looked at it when I was scanning through it. Oh my Lord, I got to go through that website. I don't know what I'm doing. That's insane. I didn't know that. I'm going to totally check those out. I am so sorry, John.
No, this has been cool.
I didn't do my due diligence.
That'll be our next talk. That'll be our next chat. Yeah,
I would love to do that. Absolutely. I thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, your channel, the content that you're making, the school, the website. Just thank you for just being such an inspiration. It's truly remarkable just to see how much you've gone through and continued, and you still have this positivity, this like you just have this real passion, and it's just I can feel it just from looking at you. It's just really inspiring. I just really appreciate everything that you're doing. Please stay strong, and God bless you. I really appreciate you, man.
Still crazy and still going forward with that crazy. So we'll keep on ahead. Thanks so much, Nicholas. Take care.
All right, you too. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a great day.